haven't got all day, so I'll have to speak. The answer to that would be no. I mean, we wouldn't expect that to work. And if somebody wanted to do that, what you could do is you could look at how a law on mergers and acquisitions impacted on an organisation, and that would be okay. But just simply saying what the law should be wouldn't work. As we're not kind of waking up very much today, I will go through these, otherwise we might be here forever. Identifying best practice in project management, that's fine. Again, in principle, it's fine. We'd obviously want to know a lot more detail, but project management is something that quite a lot of students are interested in, and something like identifying and applying best practice is okay. Probably project management is too broad a concept. And what we would do is we'd narrow it down to maybe look at something like communication within projects or project teams or scoping or whatever it happens to be, or project risk management. So we'd probably suggest it was narrowed down to something a bit more specific than just project management. Historical analysis of population trends is not management. It's something on demographics, so maybe some type of economics. So we wouldn't be particularly interested in something like that. And the last one, best practice in use of chemical fertilizers, and that's kind of agrochemicals. And again, that isn't something particular that we would be interested in. So what we're looking then for are things that have got some management theory, and that excludes the bottom two and probably that one. So those three go. There's clearly theory in motivation, there's clearly theory in project management, there's clearly theory in marketing on the second one, but because of the size of the organisation, not particularly sensible project, and I think unrealistic. If though you work for Apple and you were maybe having a separate country strategy, maybe that would be okay. But in terms of a strategy for the whole organisation, I think that's unrealistic. But as I say, depending on your role and access to information, you might be able to focus it down into a narrower part of the bigger problem. And then just to quickly go through some of these things, we'll spend a lot more time on these next time round, but if you are starting to write up early, do make sure you cover everything. We like to see some context and so on, so you can look at these later on at your leisure. We do, in terms of objectives, and this kind of goes to the proposal, the initial proposal that you're making to us. Just 4 or 5 objectives is about right, nothing more than that. People sometimes think they have to be very complex. Just keep them simple. We're all very simple people. We need to understand it, so keep it simple. And we need an outcome. Now, I did mention earlier the difference between a project, a dissertation rather, where you think you know the answer, and one where you don't. And one of the things is, if you think you know the answer to a problem, you might need to think about a hypothesis. So let's say that you've noticed a fall in productivity, and you think that the reason is the fact that supervisors are not doing their job properly. Now, what you are doing there is linking two things. You're saying, if we have poor supervision, productivity goes down. And I guess the flip side is, if we have good supervision, then productivity can be improved. And that's actually what a hypothesis is. So what a hypothesis is saying there is a link, in this example, between supervision and productivity. And so if you were doing a piece of work that said, I think the reason why our performance is poor is because we've actually got poorly trained and poorly motivated supervisors, then we would expect to see a hypothesis. And the hypothesis would be something like there is a link between supervision and performance. That's what we expect to see. So if you are trying to link a couple of things together, we would expect to see a hypothesis. If, on the other hand, you're saying, I've noticed that there's a decline in productivity, I've no idea why, then we wouldn't expect to see a hypothesis. And if we did see one, we would be surprised. So think about it in that sense. If you are making some kind of causal connection, if this happens, then this follows, then there's a hypothesis. If you are not doing that, then you don't have one. So there's an example. If we were looking at success on this module, then we could put forward a hypothesis that says students who submit drafts for guidance have a significantly improved chance of passing the module. Now, one of the things about a hypothesis is you should be able to prove it. And I could prove or disprove, because it may not be true, I could seek to prove that by getting two sets of students, one who submit work for review, one who don't submit work for review, and then looking at their mean scores. And if I could find a significant difference between those two mean scores, which obviously was a higher score for the group that asked for guidance, then if I found that, I could prove my hypothesis. If, on the other hand, it made absolutely no difference and the mean scores were exactly the same, then the hypothesis is not proven. And actually what you also do is you state the so-called null hypothesis, so you actually state it twice, once in the positive and once in the negative. If you have a hypothesis and it's not proven, it doesn't mean to say your dissertation is bad, because the fact that you've proved that something isn't what you thought it was adds to knowledge, and that's the important thing. So it's not a major problem. But if you are seeking to link two things, we would positively be looking for a hypothesis. And if we didn't see one, you would lose a few marks. Conversely, if one just popped up that we weren't expecting and we didn't think ought to be there, again you would lose a few marks because you clearly didn't understand what a hypothesis was meant to do. So just think on that. As I say, whether you need one or not depends on the work, and it doesn't matter. You know, it's your dissertation. You decide whether or not you're doing an exploratory review or whether you're trying to do something that's a causal connection. And neither is better than the other. I mentioned about the lit review. It's academic theory, and we're interested in journals, not textbooks, journals. Again, it's about theory, so audit documents, internal procedure manuals, and not literature in this context. Michael will spend more time talking about lit reviews, so I don't need to say anything else on that. But if you go into the FAQs on the module page, there's a link to how to do a lit review, which is worth having a look at. Again, Michael will talk more about research in the next session. But what we need you to show is that you understand the concept of research methodology, so that you understand different approaches and that you can select an approach and give a rationale for it. So, as I say, the next two sessions that Michael do will focus on those two things. I don't say anything else really about that. And if you're a Wales student, there's a reflective statement. If you're an Anglia student, this does not apply to you, just for Wales. Again, we'll talk about this later on, but there is an FAQ on it. And as I say, the last bit, and one of the things I do try and emphasise is that all these bits fit together. What we very often get are people who write a nice introduction, a nice lit review, a nice methodology section, but you could almost cut them up into bits because they don't talk to each other. So it's all got to flow, and I think that's the important bit. And then just to say finally that I said finally last time, but this is finally.